Hi, I'm Fiona Salter and I'm here with Peter Lindsay to discuss the extreme flooding that hit Scotland earlier this year. Peter, because the flooding was unseasonably early, what impact did it have on the farming community around Scotland?
So the area worst hit was probably Angus and East Perthshire, and the floods came, or the first rainfall event, severe rainfall event, came in early October. So a lot of the potato harvest, vegetable harvest hadn't been completed by that time. So there was actual losses from crops that were in the ground. Also, a lot of the winter cropping had only recently been put in the ground, so it hadn't settled in, the roots hadn't developed to hold soil in place, so there was a lot of movement of soil through just water running over the surface of fields. Likewise, livestock mostly were still out in the fields, so some poaching was happening on land that was worse affected. And then there was those right down at the kind of river level where actually the big floods, where the rivers burst the banks and came out onto the fields, and in a few occasions the water was right up and flooded out actual farmsteadings as well, which is obviously the kind of most serious level when stuff was in the sheds, whether it's grain, fertiliser, livestock, so all that damage was...
Yeah, and because it was so extreme, it affected a lot, not just the floodplain that it would normally, it was like extended areas.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult to mitigate against because it was...
Yeah, so it came as, we probably had 3 separate rainfall events, and during October there were certainly parts of Angus that had over 300 millimetres of rain, or over a foot of rain in a month, which I don't think anybody has had any records of anything to that level before. And because the rainy season started early this year, it has caused a lot more damage than traditional, because there was even still in some of the later areas still some combinable crops still standing in the fields that have either never been got, or by the time they were harvested, yield and quality was severely reduced at that time.
What could farmers do if that kind of event was to happen again? We're going to be talking about future-proofing in a minute, but if that, what could they do? Or dry it out and assess?
Yeah, so the damage that was done at the time of the events, so there's been riverbanks have obviously been washed out. There's a riverbank restoration scheme just been announced, and farmers will be looking to get their riverbanks reinstated whenever the conditions allow for that. There's also big areas where there was a lot of deposition, where the rivers dropped a lot of gravel and that on the fields. That needs to be cleared up as well. Washouts from downfields, sometimes it'll need a digger and dumper trucks to cart a lot of this earth back up the fields again to reinstate it back to the way it was previously. So that's the kind of immediate clear-up operation that's happened. There's lots of farm tracks that they actually just became waterways, and a lot of them just washed out. There's a lot of infrastructure repairs to be done. Field drains, that blew out. There's a lot of...
Because the quantity.
Just a sheer volume of things. But I think getting all those things kind of reinstated is the kind of immediate aftermath. But a lot of it will just have to wait until drier conditions, probably in the spring, to get that done.
And as it's been predicted that the wetter or these kind of extreme events will become more frequent, what can land managers and farmers start to plan and mitigate in the future to reduce the impact? Because flooding will happen and it's going to probably, or estimated to increase. How can they reduce the potential impact on farm in the future?
So I think farmers have been used to dealing with rain events over the years, but they are getting more regular and of more severity or increased severity as times went on. So every farmer will be looking at things such as thinking about rotation. If there's areas high level to or high risk of flooding, then spring cropping is more of an option there, rather than winter cropping, so there's less chance of or less time for a flood to happen to ruin that crop. Likewise, high value cash crops, potatoes, carrots, etc. Again, keeping them up higher, away from the river levels, just to reduce the risk. But traditionally, a lot of these floodplain types of areas are the best land for growing these crops. So it's a bit of it's a risk.
The risk, yeah. There's reducing the risk, I suppose.
Yeah. And then
Gamble.
when you're actually growing crops, there's more farmers now looking at changing the establishment techniques to establish crops, whether that's moving away from a plough-based system to either direct drilling or reduced tillage, but just having less risk of the soil running down the field in that instances when these rainfall events do happen. And yeah, going right through to actually just having a crop in the ground at all times. But I think it's looking at each field needs looked at individually. If it's a long, gentle slope running hundreds of metres down a field, then it can gather up a huge amount of water by the time it gets to the bottom of the field. If it's generally flat land, then the risk isn't quite so severe, but on flatter land the risk is more of the actual water lying on the fields for quite some time. It doesn't run off, it has to drain through the soil profile to get away. So yeah, every farm has got different risks, and to be honest, every field, and even
opportunities.
Opportunities, risks, yeah. So yeah, I think it's looking at it case by case basis, and just seeing what's best to reduce.
Looking at different options.
Yeah.
Well, looking into the actual fields, what kind of other measures can farmers introduce into their land to help build up a defence against water?
I think the most direct options is to put buffer strips alongside the watercourses to catch any sedimentation as it comes through. Hopefully it filters out the sediment and holds it within the field and lets the water run down the watercourse. And if there's large amounts of soil captured, then that can be dug up and taken back up the field again to make sure it stays on your farm. Likewise, the use of trees and hedges alongside watercourses can be beneficial when put in the right place. They'll certainly help provide that filtration and have a grass base in the bottom as well that will filter out that. But care does need to be taken that that's put in the right place to allow to be able to get in and clean out the ditches as and when required to keep the water moving.
Yeah. Recently, including trees within your fields, say at the bottom of a slope or something like that, to kind of helps reduce the flow of water before it goes. Like if you've got fields on a different slope, do you think that could potentially have a positive impact, or it depends all of the infrastructure of what the farmer has?
Yeah, I think as with anything, there's no standard solution for any field, but just building it in where it works for the farmer, for livestock if appropriate, for the machinery, whether it's machinery working in the fields or whether it's machinery for actually maintaining the rivers and ditches. But yeah, I think trees, hedges to the same extent, anything that can slow the water down from getting into the watercourses and hold it in place to reduce that rapid surge of water going down a river, but also when it does move, to try and filter out as much of the soil as possible and keep that on your own farm.
Yeah. So, basically trying to enhance your soil and protect your soil and improve the quality and structure of your soil could also help.
All the measures that make a good soil and soil structure to help. So building the organic matter in the soil can help it hold together and bind and hold it in place, whether that's from wind blow or being washed away. And it also helps the drainage, the water storage capacity of the actual soil, so that the field can store more water before it actually has to move through drains or into surface runoff. But at the end of the day, I think when you get 300 mils of rain, even pretty permanent pasture, grass swards full of organic matter, there was actually water running directly off these fields as well in these events.
And hopefully in the future move to like a more of a catchment collective, if possible. I don't know if that would be possible, but try and a whole catchment scale to help reduce the impacts.
Yeah, so I think there can be stuff done catchment-wise, starting right at the top of the hill. We probably want to slow the water down from getting down to the lower levels. And then once you get to the lower levels, it's trying to deal with the water as it kind of passes through, hopefully in a managed, controlled kind of state, so that we're not washing away the infrastructure of the roads, the drains, the field soil, the topsoil, or eroding huge areas of riverbanks and things like that. So yeah, from a catchment scale, it probably needs to start at the top of the hill and work down, and then within the farm, the farmer can plan. They will be the one that knows the farm best and the lie of the land and what to do. And I think, getting a kind of a whole farm plan approach will be more and more required.
Right beside the river, it needs to be.
No, it needs to start at the top.
If you'd like to find out more information, you can speak to your local advisor or go to fas.scot.